Well, if you watched yesterday's video, you'll find that it's very interesting, the fact that the 10 gauge hardly has any penetration. Now, one thing I want to do, and this shouldn't be possible, is we're going to take out the 12 gauge loaded with slugs, and we're going to see if it's going to have more power than the 10 gauge or if it's going to be less. But again, before we do that, we're going to head to the target range here and see how good the 12 gauge actually does shoot. We're sitting here at about 100 yards. We're going to zero in for 160 and see. Okay, so that actually is pretty accurate. We're shooting high. It's 100 yards. That means this thing shoots really accurate. Now we'll zero in for 109. And it's dead on. Wow, I didn't realize how accurate this thing actually is. All right, now, so just to find out how good the 12 gauge does, we're gonna start over here on Leighton Lakes, and we're gonna try for around like a 100-yard shot on some nice whitetail. Obviously, that's not a nice whitetail, but it is a buck, and it's gonna be our first deer of the hunt so far. And after a little while, I want to head over to Rancho del Arroyo and see if we can't find some big muleys, because muleys are a little bit tougher than whitetail. So I want to see how the 12 gauge handles on the mule deer as well. So we're right around 120 yards from this whitetail buck here. He's perfectly broadside, and we're gonna hold it right on that front shoulder. We should be able to get plenty of penetration to be able to bust through that shoulder and get a single or potentially double lung. Absolutely drilled him. And now let's see what happens. That is what's supposed to happen. He piled up within maybe 20-25 yards. Now you might be thinking, well, maybe it has to do with not having the scope. The 10 gauge doesn't have the scope. But then again, this is more about trying to find out what the penetration is like. You saw yesterday the penetration was pretty weak on the 10 gauge, but let's see what it's like on the 12 gauge. Okay, so here's our whitetail. We took him at 122 yards and we got a really good shot. Decent penetration for a 12 gauge, but honestly, I don't think the 10 gauge would give us any more penetration than this. I do think that it's probably going to be about the same. And that's kind of what I was thinking about saying before, is that the 10 gauge should have way more penetration than what it really does have at out to 120, 130 yards. And I mean, to be perfectly honest about that, I kind of was hoping for a straight, clean double lung shot. At 120 yards, you're talking 12 gauge sabots. You should be able to get a double lung shot all day long on a broadside deer like that. You should. There's no reason for it to stop at the first lung. It's not like you're taking a 120 yard shot with a bow. If you get a single lung at 120 yards with a bow, then that's going to make sense, because you're going to lose a lot of momentum and velocity at that distance. So once it hits on impact, it's going to slow it down quite a bit. But you're talking a 12 gauge slug, it's not going to slow it down at 120 yards. It is definitely not going to. All right, so we just took a 120 yard shot on that whitetail buck. He wasn't very big, but this buck here is a little bit better. Now I want to try and replicate that exact same thing and go for a 120 yard shot, but this time we're going to use a 10 gauge with slugs. All right, so we're approaching the 120 yard mark here. He's not really at a perfect angle, but I think I might try and get his attention to get him to turn. That should work. Yeah, it definitely worked. There he is right there. All we got to do is wait for him to turn a little bit. There we go. Turn back around. We got him. Or we didn't get him. How in the heck was that not a hit? Like, that should have been a perfect shot. Yeah, I do think he should go down eventually. The percentage slowly started dropping. Right in front of him. Oh, we're shooting high. Holy, I should probably just stop shooting. I mean, a running deer is one thing. It's a little more difficult than hitting a standing deer. We did not hit this thing very good, but we finally found him down over here. You know what we did? We were zeroed in for 100 yards and we dropped a little bit lower. I didn't think the zeroing would really affect it that much, but apparently it did. Still got him though, 177. So we're gonna have to do another test because that one didn't really work out very well. Finally, we found another decent buck. You guys have no clue how much I've been hunting my map and just seeing absolute tiny bucks like this. We're seeing all kinds of 1 trivials, super small 2s, and then does. But we finally got eyes on our first decent whitetail buck here. Yeah, you know, as Ron McTube was saying a couple days ago, ever since the last update, it's made latent lakes very difficult to hunt whitetail on. And honestly, I am so surprised the fact that we got that huge diamond a couple days ago. Because even during that time, I was having a very difficult time finding decent bucks. And then all of a sudden, this just giant appeared out of the woodworks. We just got into 120 yards out from this nice buck here. And that's pretty much exactly where I want him to be. So we're going to bust out the 10 gauge. He's perfectly broadside. And we're going to make this happen, guys. Should have been a perfect shot. It should have been a perfect shot. We're zeroed in for 160. I used just the tip. It should have been perfect. But I think we dropped low, to be honest. I definitely think we dropped. No, we got him. Yes, we got him. All right. Well, that was a 120 yard shot with the 10 gauge. So now we're going to see kind of the difference between what the 12 gauge penetration was like compared to the 10 gauge. Yeah, nice vital hit right there. And he ran about 20 yards. I mean, honestly, I'm not really too surprised that he ran a little ways, but still, let's take a look at him. And got a right lung shot at 118 yards. Couldn't have made a better shot if we tried, but in all reality, we should have went right through that shoulder blade there and kept going. Instead, it just kind of stopped. Like, a 10 gauge slug is a pretty heavy slug, but 177. And I honestly don't think the 10 gauge performed any better than what the 12 gauge did. I honestly don't think it did. All right, now we're going to go a little bit more long distance here. We're going to go for a 160 yard shot, and we're going to be using the 12 gauge slugs with the scope. So this buck, again, is not very impressive, but at least he's a buck and he's not a spiker, you know? So if we can get to around 160, which right about there should be 160. Wait, was that 180 or 160? Let's double check that. That's 160. All right, here we go. 160 yards. I mean, that was perfect. Or not perfect. How in the heck was that not an absolute perfect shot? You know what? I think we might have hit that vertebrae. Because we got hunting pressure now. Man, if I hit that vertebrae... I honestly don't know why I held so high. I feel like I held a little bit too high. And, well, there's our buck laying right there. So, yeah, we almost had to have hit vertebrae. For some reason, I was trying to compensate for a little bit of drop. And, no vertebrae. Okay. No vertebrae and apparently no penetration. Because in reality, that should have been spinal cord double lung shoulder blade right there. I'll admit, that was definitely my bad. I was way too far forward on that and I kind of rushed the shot. Well, we found a couple of bucks out here, and again, it's not very impressive, but still, it is a buck, and we're going to try and get to 160 yards this time. And this time, I am not going to hold high or forward. I'm going to hold it right where the center of the lung should be and right where it meets the heart. All right, so according to our rangefinder here, this buck is about 160. So if we stand up, yeah, he's 160. Man, that was perfect. I held it right on the heart and lung. Yeah, we got him that time. See, last time I took the shot and I was trying to talk too much and I squeezed the shot up, but this time I didn't really take too much time, got on him, I knew right where to aim, squeezed the trigger, and I think it worked out pretty well. So now we'll kind of be able to see how the 12 gauge did this time at kind of long distance. Well, at least in Call of the Wild. 160 yards with a 12 gauge in real life is not really long distance. I mean, it's a good shot, but I shot what was it, an 8-point buck running wide open at 130 yards out with my Benelli bird barrel open sights. So that was 130 yards. Now we're talking 160 in Call of the Wild, and it seems like it's forever away, but really it's not that far. But anyways, right lung shot at 160, and yeah, pretty much perfect. You know, I was holding like right here, and since we were zeroed in for 166, we actually shot a tad bit higher than what I was really aiming for, but still, you know, a perfect, nice vital shot there, and a 151 whitetail. There's a doe right there, like right there. We just dropped her, and I think we might have hit spinal cord because we're zeroed in for 160, and I totally forgot to zero back in for 100, but we got vitals too, so okay. Well, it is possible to get double lung at 35 yards. Well, I would sure as heck hope so. I mean, if you're shooting a deer at 35 yards and not getting double lung with a 12 gauge shotgun, then there's something wrong. But I mean, we barely got double lung, like it just barely touched the opposite lung there. I do think that if we were a little bit lower, maybe like an inch or two lower, I don't even know if we would have got double lung. Because if you look, there's a gap between the two lungs there. We probably would have stopped like right here. But yeah, it could be kind of interesting to find out how that 10 gauge can do on the moose. Now, I'm not really, well, I don't have very high hopes, let's just say. But we got a bull out here, a very, very small bull. And if we can get to under 100 yards, I definitely want to try and attempt to take a shot on this bull with the 10 gauge and the slugs. All right, well, there's our bull right there. He's bedded 100 yards out from us, so he's definitely in range. And honestly, I wouldn't mind taking a bedded shot right there, except his front shoulder is kind of blocking his vitals, so it's really not ideal. But maybe if we stood up, it might get his attention enough to kind of turn around. All right, here we go. It worked. Should have been low lung. I mean, it had potential. Had really, really good potential. And that is not looking too promising. Although it's kind of what I was expecting. That is a no organs hit right there. No organs hit. Okay, well, that's what I was thinking was gonna happen. So this is actually kind of a funny story because I'm looking for mule deer and all of a sudden I spotted this decent whitetail trotting through these hills here. What's that one now? That is not a decent one, but this is definitely a decent buck. We keep getting a call from mule deer out here, but I have yet to see them. So I don't know like where in the heck they're hanging out at. They gotta be out there somewhere, but nonetheless, let's try and get on this buck. Apparently he's gonna get stuck on that rock right there, which is kind of interesting, but let's see if we can't take a shot. All right, I think we drilled him. Or maybe not. Okay. I don't know what we hit or where we hit or how we hit it, but apparently it went down eventually. Kind of an interesting angle that we took the shot at, but I don't believe, oh, they're, holy crap, that's a freaking giant buck. 250 to 317 on the estimate on that thing. Oh my God. That is what we're trying to get. So it's actually kind of a good thing that we took a shot at that buck right there, because had we not taken that shot, we never would have found this giant muley buck bedded over here. And now we know pretty much where he's hanging out. So we just got to figure out a way to get in position to get a shot off here. I would imagine that eventually he should calm down and want to bed back down. So we'll just keep an eye out and try and spot him again. Right there he is. Where in the heck is he going? Come on, turn around. Yes. Perfect. I mean, that right there is probably a 280 plus muley buck right there. That's a 280 plus monster muley buck. And he's bedded on the top of that ridge at 300 yards out from us. So let's just say we got our work cut out for us. We got a long ways to go and quite a bit of time to get there, but we better be careful. And there lays our absolute monster muley buck. He's gonna be bedded less than 200 yards away from us, but he's on the back side of that hill right there. That's what these big bucks do. They're super smart, and they kind of go to where they can see you, but you can't see them, even though we can kind of see him. If you look closely, you can just barely see the tip of his rack. In fact, so that means we're gonna have to stay high up on this ridge here and kind of circle around from the back side, because if we go too low, then we're gonna have a bad position to be able to see him. And the key is to make sure we can see him at all times, because once you lose sight of him, he could be gone. Well, we got within 50 yards away from this giant buck here, and I can't see him anywhere. It's also very thick here, so that could be why we can't see him. But the last place that we saw him was right there. Oh my God. He is less than 15 yards away from us right there. Holy. Oh, he's big. He just bedded back down. He just bedded back down. Less than 15 yards away from us. He's right behind all that brush. Look at that. I mean, honestly, like, he's so close. I don't even know if we should use the shotgun on this, but we kind of have to, you know, because it's a shotgun hunt. So, well, let's zero in for 50, because he's like 25 yards away. And there he is right there. Look at that. He is so close to us. And we could almost take that shot right there. What I want to do is crouch up, but then he's going to see us and potentially spook. Look at that. He's a freaking giant. We dropped him. We dropped him at 20 yards away. We dropped him with the 12 gauge and the slugs. Man, is he one heck of an awesome buck. Yeah, I would say he's like a 280, probably 278, something like that. 278.9 score, and we got a right lung, liver, stomach at 16 yards away with the 12 gauge and the slugs. Kind of an interesting point of entrance there. It looks like it never really penetrated. It just hit the skin and kind of expanded. Yeah, I mean, I understand like all the vitals that we hit is perfect and everything, but it should show this point right here coming out the opposite side, because 16 yards away, I would sure hope it would go straight through. But that is a giant mealy buck down, and that is going to be it for this video. So it kind of does wrap it up for you and tell you that the 12 gauge is just as good as a 10 gauge. So there's really no point in trying to get the 10 gauge if you already have the 12 gauge. The only thing is you can't hunt level 9 animals with the 12 gauge, so I guess there's that. But if you watched my video from yesterday, you would see that I wouldn't really recommend you trying to hunt level 9 animals with the 10 gauge, because it just doesn't have very good penetration and it doesn't really work out very well. Anyways, that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.